Dear students, welcome to the course of Introduction to Economics. I'm your course instructor, Shahzad Durrani, lecturer at the Institute of Business Studies, KUST Hangu campus. In today's lecture, we will talk about law of demand. This is the outline for our today's lecture. In order to understand law of demand, first we will try to understand what is demand. Then we will talk about the definition and the basic concept of the law of demand. And then we will try to learn demand schedule and demand curve. Then we will talk about why the demand curve is downward sloping, and then what are the shifters of the demand curve, and at the end we will try to differentiate and understand change in demand versus change in quantity demand. So let's start. Law of demand. So for this we need to understand the basic definition of demand. Demand by definition it's an economic principle that refers to the amount of products or services that consumer wish to purchase at any given price level. So demand is actually baked by your purchasing power, right? If you want to buy something, you have a certain amount of money in your pocket and you are going to buy a certain product. So for example, your demand or your wish or your desire is based on your ability to buy, is based on your purchasing power, in other words, right? So demand is always backed by your purchasing power, or you can also call it buying power. What is law of demand? This law of demand states that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? So there is an inverse relation. Inverse relation means there is an opposite or there is a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? What does it mean? It means if there is an increase in price, right, if the prices goes up, then the demand quantity demanded will decrease or quantity demanded will goes down, and vice versa. If the prices goes up, the quantity demanded will go down, and if the prices goes down, the quantity demanded will goes up. So it means that there is an inverse relationship. The law of demand states that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. What is demand schedule? Demand schedule is actually a table showing that relationship between price and quantity demanded of a commodity, of a good, right? So this is the table given. Here in the table we can see the price of the coke that is given in rupees and the quantity demanded. So if we look to the table, if the price is 40, then the quantity demanded of coke is 2, right? 2. It means that you have the ability, you are able to buy 2 cokes when the price is 40. Let's say if the price is reduced or decreased to 30, then you are able to buy 4, right? So there is an inverse relationship, right? If the price is going down, so the demand for the product is going up. Then if the price is reduced to 20, then you can buy 6. So it means that there is an inverse relationship between price and demand. Now, demand curve, we can understand this concept of the law of demand from a demand curve as well. So what is demand curve? Demand curve is actually a graphical representation of the demand schedule. It shows how much of a good or services consumer want to buy at a given price, right? So it's a graphical representation of the table of the demand schedule or of the law of demand. So now look at the graph. In the graph you can see the prices of the coke at the vertical axis, and then the quantity demanded at the horizontal axis, or you can call it the y-axis and the x-axis, right? So the quantity demanded is 246 and the prices of the coke is 20, 30 and 40, right? And we can plot this table here on the graph. So if we plot it, after the plot you can see, for example, if the price is 20, right, then your demand was 6. Let's say when the price is increasing here, for example from 20 to 30, so your demand is going to decrease. So you can plot it, or vice versa. If the demand is going to for example, if the demand is going to increase, then the prices is going to decrease here. So we plot that table here on the graph, and we can see that line. That's called the demand curve, the green line that you can see, and this line is actually sloping downward. This line is sloping downward because the demand is actually increasing. The demand here is actually increasing. We can see the expansion in the demand while the price is reducing. When the price is reducing, the demand is actually increasing. So there is a negative relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, or you can say that there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Now, why the demand curve is downward sloping, as we can see in the graph that we just saw, right? So there are three reasons of it. The first one is substitution effect. Change in price motivate consumer to buy relatively cheaper substitute goods. For example, you have two goods, let's say Pepsi and Coke. So when these two goods are called substitute goods because you can use them in place of each other. For example, when the prices of the Coke goes up, then the demand for the Coke is actually decreasing, and if the prices of the Pepsi remains the same, then the demand for the Pepsis are going to increase. So it means, for example, these are the substitute products that you can use it for each other, in place of each other. So this is called what? The substitute effect. So substitute effect, the demand is actually sloping downward because of the substitute effect of the goods or the product or the commodities. Then we have the income effect. Change in price affect the purchasing power of the consumer income. For example, you have for example, there is a person, he has the purchasing power, like a certain amount of purchasing power he has. When he goes to the market, he sees that there is a sale on a certain product, right? So for example, he will buy, let's say he bought 20 amount of goods, right? Or 20 in number, I mean, like let's see, for example, he is going to buy 20 gallons of milk. Let's say he bought 20 gallons of milk because there was a sale, right? So for example, next time he goes to the market and there was no sale, so he will less. Why the demand increases? Because there is a effect on his income, right? Because of what? When the prices was reduced, so it has an effect on his income because his purchasing power increase, right? His purchasing power increased at that time when there was a sale. When the prices goes up, so there is an effect on his income and he has less purchasing power as before. So this is called the income effect. Then we will talk about the law of diminishing marginal utility. This is a law of diminishing marginal utility. It says as you continue to consume a given amount of goods, for example, you will eventually get less additional utility from each unit you consume, right? So this marginal utility says, For example, when you are consuming a product, so for example, one additional unit that you are consuming, the utility that you are getting or the satisfaction that you got from the first consumption of that product will not be the same as the last consumption of that product. Actually, diminishing means decreasing, marginal means additional, and utility means satisfaction. So this law states that the utility, the satisfaction that you are getting from the first, for example, from the first sip of, for example, of a milk will not be the same as the second, third, fourth sip of a milk, right? So this is called law of diminishing marginal utility. Then shifts in demand curve, we will try to understand this concept, and it's very important. Any change in determinants of demand causes shift in demand curve, right? Any change in determinants of demand, any change, for example, if there is a change in the price, it's actually called, for example, there's a shift in the demand curve, there's a shift in the same demand curve, for example. And there are other determinants too, and these are called the shifters of the demand curve, and these are taste and preferences. For example, if we talk about a milk and we say, if you are consuming one glass, if the kids are consuming one glass of milk early in the morning, so it increases their ability to learn and to gain knowledge in the school or in the college. So this will increase what? This will increase shifts in the demand. This will increase the demand, right? So other than the price, it will increase. Here the prices are not reduced. Here we can see that there is a taste and preferences are going to change. So this is called shift in the demand, or taste and preferences are called shifters in the demand curve, shifters, right? So this increase, if there is an increase in the demand, right, so this, it will shift to the right, the demand curve will shift to the right. And if there is a decrease in the demand, let's say for example, if we at one time there was a reduction in the Telenor SIM, because for example something happened related to the Telenor company, because people try to reduce the consumption of the Telenor company because of the preferences that they have. They switch towards Zong, they switch towards Ufone. So this is called decrease in demand. And when there is a decrease in demand, so the demand curve will shift to the left, right? So if there is a decrease, it will shift to the left, and if there is an increase, it will shift to the right. Number of consumers, the second one, if there is a number of consumers increase suddenly about a certain product, right, so we can see an increase in demand. So the demand curve will shift towards right, and if the number of consumers are reducing, then we can see the decrease in the demand. So the demand curve will shift towards the left. Price of related goods. There are two kinds of goods. One is called complementary goods. We will talk about it in the next slide. And one is called substitute goods. If we can see the increase and decrease in it, so it's also affecting the demand curve, shift towards the right or shift towards the left. Income, for example, there are actually two kinds of goods. One is called normal goods and one is called inferior goods. Your income and demands are directly related when we talk about the normal goods. When we talk about the normal goods, if your income is increasing, your demand for that product is also increasing. So income and the demand for that product is actually directly related. For example, if your income is increased, so you are going to buy more milk. So this is called the normal goods. Some goods are called inferior goods. It's actually inversely proportional. So for example, if your income is increasing, your demand for that product is actually decreasing. And why is that? Because you are switching towards a good brain because of the increase in the income. Or if your income is decreasing, then you do not have the purchasing power to buy that product, then you are switching the product and buying a less valuable product, right? So this is the effect of the income on the demand curve, and it shifts the demand curve to the right or to the left. And then the expectations we have, for example, we have a holy month, Ramadan. So if Ramadan is coming, everybody is going to buy many products. For example, if there is a tomatoes, if they are too cheap and people are thinking that Ramadan is coming after a week, so people are going to buy more and more tomatoes. So this causes a increase in demand, right? So this is called the effect of the expectations or determinants of the that cause shifts in the demand curve. Now, change in price of related goods. We will talk about the complementary goods that we have. A complementary good is a good whose appeal increases with the popularity of its complement, right? Or you can say in simple words, goods that are used together with another good. The two goods that are compulsory for each other. For example, ink and pink. Pen, for example, if you can see the increase in the price of the ink, for example, right, then the demand for the pen will decrease. Clear? So for example, if for let's say if the petrol is going to decrease, the prices of the petrol is going to decrease, then people are going to buy more and more car, right? So this is called what? The complementary goods. Let's look at here. If A is a complement to B, an increase in the price of A will result in a negative movement along the demand curve of A and cause the demand curve for B to shift in. Less of each good will be demanded. The example of this could be if the price of petrol is decreased by some amount, let's say if it's decreased, this would result in a higher quantity of cars demanded because the petrol is of low price, so people want to have their own cars, right? So the prices of the car will jump. Complement. So if one is increasing, the other, for the one is decreasing, the other is going to increase. The higher quantity demanded would cause the demand curve to shift rightwards, right, as we talk about the demand curve, to a new position. Ink and pen, that this could be the example. Ball and bat, these are the complementary products that or goods. Car and petrol. Toothbrush and toothpaste. What does it mean? When two goods are complementary, the price of one and demand for another moves in opposite direction, right? The price in one and the demand for another. If the price is going to decrease, the demand for another will go up. Then we have the substitute products. What are the substitute products? Goods that can be used in place of another goods. Like we talked about it, right? This is also has the effect. We already discussed it. For example, Pepsi and Coke. If the prices of the Pepsi are going up, then then the demand for the Coke will increase. If the prices of the Coke remains the same, right? Just like coffee and tea, beef and chicken, right? When two goods are substitutes, the price of one and demand for another moves in same direction. Change in quantity demand, what does it mean? Change in quantity demand is movement from one point to another, from one price combination to another on a fixed demand curve. On a fixed demand curve, for example, clear? An increase in quantity demand is represented by expansion in demand curve, while a decrease in quantity demanded is represented by contraction in demand curve. Look at the first graph. We can see that there is an expansion in demand curve. Clear? How? We can see that the quantity actually increases. The demand for the quantity actually increases with the decrease in the price, right? So we can see the expansion, and this is called expansion in demand curve with the same fixed demand curve. In the second graph we can see that there is a contraction, because when the prices goes up, the quantity demanded for that product actually reduces, right? So we can see the contraction in the demand curve when the prices goes up. So you can see the contraction and in the demand quantity demanded, and when the prices goes down, we can see the expansion in the quantity demanded. These are the two concepts which are necessary to understand the graphs. The next one is the differentiation between change in demand and change in quantity demanded. Change in quantity demanded is represented by movement along the existing demand curve, the fixed demand curve, right? Change in quantity demanded, this change in quantity demand is attributed to change in price of the commodity. So this is mostly related to change in the price. For example, if the price is increasing, so you are actually reducing, increasing, you are reducing that product. So if the price is decreasing, then you are increasing that product, but you are actually moving that fixed demand curve. As you can see, the blue line actually it represents the movement from the red to the black and then to the red dots. You can see the movement along the same fixed curve, and that's called change in quantity demanded. One is called change in demand. Change in demand represented by shifts in demand curve, shift to the right, shift to the left, and that is change in demand actually. So there is a difference between the change in quantity demanded and change in demand. This change in demand is attributed to change in other factors of demand instead of change in price. So other factors like taste and preferences, like income, like number of consumers, for example, and then expectations, the income, the purchasing power, we talked about it. So this represents the change in demand. And when we talk about the price, and this is about the fixed demand curve that we have, the movement only. So this is called change in quantity demand and change in demand, and you can see in the graph as well. This is all about our today's lecture. So we discussed about law of demand. So we understand the basic concept of the demand, law of demand, and demand schedule, demand curve. Then we talk about demand curve, why it's sloping downward. We talk about the three reasons that we have, shifters of the demands. We discuss like the taste and preferences, number of consumers, income, expectations, and the price of the related goods, complementary goods, substitutes or substitution goods. And then we talked about change in demand and change in quantity demanded. These are the references that I use while making these slides. Thank you so much.